My name is Emily Grace Warren, and when I sold the house out from under my brother, the one I bought for him as a wedding gift, I made sure to stand on the porch when he came home with his new bride, keys in hand. The look on his face when I said, "I sold it. You said I wasn't family, remember?" was worth every cent of the $770,000 I'd spent. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, especially if you've ever had to fight for your place in your own family. And if you've ever been told to, just let it go, when they hand everything to someone else, this story is for you. Now, let me take you back to the moment I learned what it felt like to be dismissed, not as a child, not as a girl, but as someone whose value was invisible unless she paid to be seen. It was late summer in Tennessee, one of those evenings where the air stuck to your skin like guilt after church. I was 12. My elbows rested on the sticky vinyl of our kitchen table, a chipped beige thing that smelled like old bacon grease and pine sol. Jason, my older brother by 2 years, was shoveling spaghetti into his mouth like he hadn't eaten since the Bush administration. Our dad, Frank Warren, sat across from us, leafing through some tool catalog like it was the Bible. Our mom, Diane, moved between stove and sink like clockwork, never missing a beat, not even when Jason asked offhandedly, "Can I get $20 for lunch next week? We're going to Zaxby's." Without looking up, Dad reached into his wallet and peeled off a crisp 20 like it was nothing. I blinked. Then I looked down at the soggy PB&J in my lunchbox and back up at him. "Wait," I said. "I asked for lunch money yesterday, and you told me to pack leftovers." "You did pack lunch," Mom replied, stacking plates like she hadn't just heard what happened. "Jason gets money every week," I said, my voice rising. "Why does he get everything?" The room froze, not completely, but the way it does when everyone's pretending it's not happening. Dad's eyes flicked up from his catalog. "Because he's a boy," he said, flat and final. "And boys need more." My fork clinked against the plate as I set it down. My heartbeat drowned out the crickets outside. "He's a boy." I repeated. "Yeah," Jason chimed in, smirking like it was a joke only he was in on. "That's biology or whatever." I wanted to throw my glass. Instead, I slammed it onto the table so hard that water splashed across the placemat. "So being your daughter means I get nothing?" "You get food, don't you?" Dad said. "You've got a roof over your head. Stop acting like a brat." Mom didn't look up. She just scrubbed a spot on the stove like it was me she was trying to erase. I stood there, breathing through my nose like I'd seen them do in those anger management videos at school. But inside, something cracked. Not loud, not even sharp. More like a quiet, final click. It was the sound of a promise locking into place. "Fine, I'll earn my own." I didn't say it out loud. I didn't have to. I just gathered my plate, rinsed it, and went upstairs. Later that night, when the house was asleep, I sat at my desk under the dim yellow light of my nightstand and started sketching numbers in a notebook, figuring out how much money I'd need to make if I wanted to never ask them for anything again. I didn't know how yet. But I would. Because if being born a girl meant I had to build my own place at the table, then I'd build a table they couldn't sit at without asking me first. By the time I turned 15, my fingers smelled permanently like fryer grease and cracked from washing dishes in too hot water. I wasn't supposed to be working, not officially, not in Tennessee, not at my age. But I needed money, and waiting until the world allowed me to start earning felt like a trap. So I lied. The manager at Ridge Hill Diner squinted at the birth date on my fake ID and nodded like he didn't want to think too hard about it. "You show up, you don't steal, and you don't burn the place down," he said with a shrug. "That's good enough for me." The place was a retro knockoff with cracked red booths and music from a jukebox that only played 80s songs half the time. The other half it just made a wheezing noise like a dying robot. I worked after school 4 days a week and double shifts on Saturdays. I scrubbed tables, hauled crates, flipped burgers, and learned how to keep my mouth shut when customers called me sweetheart, like they were leaving me a tip in dignity. I brought every paycheck home, cashed it at the gas station because we didn't have a bank account, and tucked the bills into a coffee can under my bed labeled GTFO in Sharpie. Get the freak out. Some nights I'd come home and find Jason in his room playing video games, his shoes kicked off in the hall, while Mom called down to me, "Emily, the trash is piling up again." No one ever asked how my day went. No one cared that I had calluses forming on my palms at 15. I'd sit at our scratched kitchen table after dinner, textbooks spread out next to the mail, trying to concentrate while Jason watched YouTube with the volume way too high in the next room. I'd study until my vision blurred because the one thing I was sure of, the only thing, was that I wasn't going to stay in that house forever. One Tuesday night, just after the dinner rush, I was scrubbing down the grill when my manager, Rick, a balding man who always smelled faintly of menthols and regret, tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey Em, got a minute?" I wiped my hands and followed him into the back, where the walk-in freezer hummed and the staff break room smelled like old takeout and despair. Rick scratched the back of his neck and sighed. "Labor Board came through last week. They're following up with some surprise audits." I froze. "Okay, they flagged your file." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "They called the school district," he said quietly. "Found out you're 16, not 17 like your papers say." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Rick, I need this job. I don't take smoke breaks. I don't even eat free fries like everyone else, please." He looked down at his hands. "I know, kid. You're the hardest worker in this place, but I could lose my license. They're cracking down." I nodded once. "Hard, so that's it." "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "Come back when you turn 17 and I'll hire you the same day." I grabbed my backpack from my locker and stepped outside into the cold. It was late November, the sky already dark, the parking lot wet with rain that hadn't fully turned to snow. The neon sign buzzed behind me, casting red light onto the concrete like some kind of low-rent spotlight. For a second I just stood there. I thought about walking home. I thought about calling someone, except there was no one to call. Then I did something weird. I laughed. Not a big laugh, just a breath, sharp and angry and bitter. Of course the world would take even this from me. The one thing I had clawed out of the mud by lying, sweating, sacrificing sleep and schoolwork. Ripped away by a clipboard and a phone call. But I didn't cry, not that night. I just walked home with my head up and my fists in my jacket pockets, one hand gripping the crumpled last paycheck in the lining. When I got home, the house was dark. Jason was out, probably at his girlfriend's, and Mom had left a note on the table that said meatloaf in microwave and nothing else. I sat down at the kitchen table. I pulled out a napkin from my bag. And on the back of it, I started sketching something I didn't yet have words for. It wasn't a plan. Not yet, but it was a refusal. A refusal to stay small. A refusal to keep being the girl who gets told no just because someone decided her life should be worth less. I folded the napkin and tucked it into the coffee can with the cash. And I whispered to myself, "I'll figure it out, again." Because I always had. I was 17 when I made my first $50 off a pair of shoes someone else had thrown away. They were red leather ankle boots. Scuffed, yes, but real leather. I'd found them at a thrift store up on Union Avenue, stuffed behind a rack of size 11s that nobody wanted. They were my size, technically, but I didn't buy them to wear. I bought them because I'd started watching resale videos online. Girls my age, standing in cramped dorm rooms, flipping items from Goodwill and making rent money. At first I didn't believe it. But curiosity is louder than doubt, and desperation has a way of making you brave. So I bought the boots for $4.99. Cleaned them with an old toothbrush and vinegar. Took pictures of them on a folded bedsheet by the window where the light was softest. Listed them on an app I'd downloaded the week before. 3 days later, someone in Pennsylvania paid $50 for them, plus shipping. I stood in line at the post office, holding the taped-up box like it was something sacred. The woman at the counter barely looked at me as she printed the label, but I walked out of there feeling like I had just committed a minor miracle. I had turned trash into power. That night, I stayed up searching for more. Scarves, blazers, denim with the right kind of distressing. I wasn't fashionable, never had been, but I started to see things differently in those racks. Not clothes. Inventory, strategy. By the time I turned 18, I'd set up a secondhand account with a brand name, a homemade logo, and a monthly spreadsheet that would have made my economics professor proud. Speaking of professors, yes, I got in. University of Memphis, full scholarship. Faculty of Economics. I'd applied without telling my parents. I'd taken the ACT in silence, studied from borrowed books, and submitted my FAFSA from a public library computer. When the letter came in the mail, I opened it outside, sitting on the curb in front of our peeling fence, so no one would see me smile. I moved into the dorms that August. Jason had taken Dad's old truck to school a year earlier, with a full set of furniture and a Best Buy shopping spree. I moved in with a twin sheet set from Dollar General and a mini fridge my roommate offered to split. Still, I had my own space, and a lock on my door, and a dream that was finally starting to look like a path. Most days I was buried in lectures, textbooks, and retail analytics coursework. Nights, I scoured secondhand stores between classes, dragging bags of clothes back to my room like some kind of denim Santa. Then I'd steam them, photograph them, and package each sale by hand. Weekends, I was elbows deep in packing peanuts and polymailers, running back and forth to the post office like it was my second job. Actually, it was my only job. And slowly it started to grow. But the real test came one weekend I spent back home for fall break. My roommate had gone camping. I couldn't afford the gas to go anywhere else. So I took the bus and found myself back in that old kitchen, same peeling wallpaper, same hum of resentment underneath everything. I was sitting at the table late one night, packing 3 orders. One was a faux fur jacket headed to Brooklyn. Another, a vintage leather belt bound for Denver. I had my label printer plugged into the wall and my laptop open beside a stack of folded jeans. Mom shuffled in around midnight, robe tied loosely, face slack with disapproval. "What are you doing?" she asked, like it was obvious she didn't approve. "Packing orders." "For what?" "I resell clothes online," I said, eyes still on the shipping label. "It's going well." She looked around the room, frowning at the boxes and the clutter. "This looks like a mess." "It's money," I said evenly. She snorted. "You waste so much time on this nonsense, all those little side things. You should focus on your degree, or just get a real job like normal people." I could have explained that I was making more than minimum wage already, that I was learning digital marketing and supply chain logic in real time, that I'd created something out of absolutely nothing. But I didn't. I just looked her in the eye and said, "I haven't asked you for a single dollar since I moved out." That shut her up. She blinked once, then waved her hand and muttered, "Don't stay up all night," as she padded back to bed. I returned to packing my orders, the hum of the printer suddenly feeling like applause. And in that moment, I knew, it didn't matter if she got it. I was building something she couldn't touch, something that didn't ask for permission. I slipped the last label onto the last box and whispered to myself, "Next year I double it," because I was done asking. Forever. It was a Thursday, late April. I was sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor of my off-campus apartment, barely more than a glorified studio above an auto parts store, and eating reheated mac and cheese out of a plastic bowl when I got the email. Transfer completed, funds received. That was the last payment from a vintage boutique in Chicago that had bought out my entire spring inventory. 37 items, gone in one invoice. I wiped cheese off my fingers with a paper towel, opened my bank app, and waited for it to load. And then there it was. 70,213.89. I stared at it, blinked, then refreshed the screen. Same number. I didn't scream, I didn't dance. I just sat there, the hum of the mini fridge filling the silence, and felt something shift. I did that. It wasn't an inheritance. It wasn't a scholarship or a loan or a handout. It was every 5 a.m. Goodwill haul, every 2 a.m. packing session, every spreadsheet I built while other girls were at tailgates or Tinder dates. I wasn't just surviving college anymore. I was building something. I leaned back against the wall, phone still in my hand, and let the number sink in. That money wasn't just numbers. It was exits, options, power. It meant I could breathe. I didn't have to beg for rent help if a client ghosted me. I didn't have to call my mom pretending I wasn't sick because I couldn't afford to see a doctor. I didn't have to listen to Jason brag over group texts about how dad had helped him with another down payment on something while I kept my head down. For the first time since I was 12, I didn't feel like I owed the world an explanation for existing. My phone buzzed. A message from Jason in the family group chat. "Big news coming soon, eyes." Of course it was vague. Of course Mom replied with 12 heart emojis. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet and started a line item titled, "Investment Goals." Because here's what no one ever tells girls like me, girls who are told to keep quiet and work hard and not expect much. Once you stop begging to be included, you start learning how to build your own kingdom. And I was just getting started. Graduation day felt quieter than I expected. No fanfare. No champagne-soaked selfies with sorority sisters. Just me, walking across that stage in a borrowed gown, shaking the dean's hand like I had practiced in front of the mirror. There were no familiar faces in the crowd. Jason had skipped it for a fishing trip. Mom said, "Oh, sweetie, Sunday services got moved, and we already RSVP'd to Pastor Craig's luncheon." Dad never answered my text, but I didn't let it ruin the moment. Instead, I took a selfie in the campus courtyard, cap slightly crooked, diploma scroll in hand, with a caption that read, "From the friar to the finish line." Then I went home to my apartment, pulled out my laptop, and opened the pitch deck I'd been refining for months. I had a plan. While other grads were panicking about entry-level job applications, I'd already soft-launched my own boutique consulting business. Retail revitalization, small shop digital strategy, and resale inventory management, that was my angle. I'd helped myself rise from $5 thrift store shoes to $70 K in the bank. Now I'd do it for other underdogs. My first official client, a black-owned coffee shop on the south side that had struggled to stay afloat after a big chain opened across the street. I helped them redesign their product displays, create loyalty incentives, and run targeted promotions through local social media groups. Their weekly revenue jumped 32% in 6 weeks. Then came a handmade soap shop, a resale boutique in Midtown, a farm-to-table delivery company run by a woman named Jo with sharp elbows and a soft heart. They paid me modestly but reliably. Word spread. And slowly my calendar began to fill with names of people who respected my time and paid for it. And then the family dinner happened. I hadn't been home in nearly a year, not out of malice, just survival. But Mom called one Sunday afternoon and said, "Chicken casserole's in the oven and your brother's got something to share, you should come." Part of me hesitated, but another part, tired, curious, said yes, so I went. Same kitchen, same wallpaper. Jason in the same chair he'd practically carved his name into as a teen. I took my usual seat and spooned a modest portion of casserole onto my plate while Mom beamed across the table. Jason cleared his throat dramatically. "So," he said, flashing a too big grin, "I'm getting married this summer." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then applause, actual applause from Mom. "I told you she'd say yes," Mom gushed, dabbing at the corner of her eye like he'd just proposed in front of the Eiffel Tower and not, I later learned, in a Dairy Queen parking lot. Dad clapped him on the back. "That's my boy." Jason turned to me. "Can you believe it, me married?" I smiled politely. "Congratulations." And then something strange happened. They turned to me, not to criticize or mock, not to remind me I was too intense or too serious. They asked, "What have you been up to, Em?" I blinked. Jason added, "Mom said you're doing like some business thing." "Consulting," I said. "I help small retailers optimize their product flow and marketing, mostly in underserved neighborhoods." Mom nodded. "She's always been good with numbers." Dad chimed in. "Didn't you win some scholarship for that degree?" It felt surreal, like stepping into someone else's dream where I was the golden child for once. "Yeah," I said carefully, "I've been busy." Jason leaned back in his chair. "Man, that's wild. Maybe you can help us figure out how to decorate the new house. We're looking at a place in East Memphis, Little Starter Home." He said it like it was no big deal, but I noticed the quick glance Mom shot him. The kind that said she knows where the down payment's coming from and it's not him. Still, I didn't comment. I just nodded. And for the rest of that dinner, I watched them treat me like someone who had arrived. As if my accomplishments had finally breached the invisible wall between the girl who gets by and the girl we're proud of. They asked follow-up questions. They laughed at my stories. Mom offered to pack me leftovers. I didn't trust it. Not yet. But I let myself enjoy it, just a little. Because for the first time in years, they weren't treating me like I didn't exist. They were looking at me like I mattered. I should have known better. But that night, as I rode the bus back to my apartment with a Tupperware of chicken casserole warming my lap and the ghost of Jason's smile echoing in my head, I felt something strange blooming in my chest. Hope. Maybe I was finally part of them again. Not the afterthought. Not the odd one out. Just Emily, the daughter who'd made it, the sister who was worth calling. The girl who had something to offer and was being invited to offer it. The thought buzzed around my brain for days. They kept texting. Jason sent me links to houses they were touring, he and Brooke, his fiancée. "Too far from her mom," he'd write. Or, "Yard's a mess but the kitchen's sick." Mom added me to the wedding planning group chat. It was mostly cake flavors and centerpiece debates, but she'd write things like, "So glad you're involved this time, M2 hearts," and I let that sentence hang there in my heart longer than it deserved. Then one night Jason called me, not texted, called. "Yo," he said. Random thought. "You know about all this mortgage stuff, right?" I was already pulling up the MLS listing he'd sent earlier. A 3-bed colonial just outside East Memphis. Vaulted ceilings. New appliances. Listed at $680K. "I know enough," I said. "We're trying to crunch numbers," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Brooke's parents can help a little, but we're still short on the down payment. And with wedding costs, it's just," he trailed off. And I waited. Because I already knew where this was headed. And part of me, the part that still remembered being told boys needed more, wanted it to happen, wanted to be the one they needed now. So I said it. Not because I was being manipulated, at least not consciously, but because I wanted to seal this new version of us. Wanted proof I was no longer invisible. "I could help," I said, "if you really love that house." Jason paused. "You're serious?" "I've been saving for a while," I said, downplaying it. "Was planning to buy something for myself, but family looks out for each other, right?" He exhaled into the phone. "Emily, that would change everything. I mean, Brooke would freak." "Don't tell her yet," I said with a small laugh. "Let's make sure everything lines up." 3 weeks later, I was sitting across from their real estate agent at a sunlit office in Germantown, signing a buyer's transfer agreement. My name wouldn't be on the deed, Jason wanted it that way. "Just cleaner for taxes," he'd said. I'd requested a lawyer to look over the documents, but Jason brushed it off. "We're family," he said. "No need to make it weird." So I didn't make it weird. I wired the money. $770,000, a combination of savings and returns from my growing consulting business. It stung, but in a good way, like a stretch. After the last signature, Jason hugged me so hard he nearly lifted me off the ground. "You're the best sister in the world," he said, eyes damp. "Seriously. I don't even have words." And in that moment I believed him. That night I sat on my bed and stared at the confirmation email from the bank. Amount transferred, $770,000 recipient, Jason Warren and Brooke Sanders. Note: "Congratulations on the new chapter." I closed my laptop slowly. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from pride, from power, from the idea that maybe, just maybe, this was how I finally earned my seat at the table. I imagined the wedding toast, the inside jokes, the family photo where I wouldn't be on the edge anymore. I had given everything, and I did it with a smile, because that's what family does, right? The message came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was between client calls, half-eaten salad wilting beside my laptop when my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Jason, hey Em, don't take this personally, but you're not invited to the wedding. It's for close family only. Hope you understand." At first I thought it was a joke. One of those tone-deaf texts he sent sometimes, something he'd follow up with a laughing emoji and a gotcha. But the punchline never came. I stared at it, blinked, reread it, once, twice, 5 times. Each pass felt like someone slowly turning a key in a lock that shouldn't have existed. Close family only. I read those 3 words so many times they stopped sounding like English. I didn't move. My fork slipped from my fingers onto the floor with a clink I barely registered. Outside my apartment window, traffic blurred past. Ordinary, uninterrupted. As if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. I read it again. Not even a phone call. Not even a conversation. Just a text, casual, clinical, like he was canceling a lunch date. "You're not invited." I didn't answer right away. My hands felt disconnected from my body. Numb. I opened our family group chat, thinking maybe there was a mistake. Maybe the invites hadn't gone out yet. Maybe I'd find a message that would undo what I'd just read. Instead, I saw photos. Photos of the custom invitations posted by Mom 2 days ago. Delicate white envelopes with rose gold script. "Jason and Brooke, a celebration of love," I scrolled. There was a message from Mom beneath the image. "So beautiful. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone we love most." 2 hearts, everyone. They love most. I wasn't on the list. My chest tightened. I closed the chat. My thumbs hovered over Jason's message. I thought about calling, about asking directly why, but then I looked at the message again. Every word was deliberate, final, no room for questions. "Don't take this personally." But how else could I take it? I had covered the house. I had sat in that Germantown office and watched a wire transfer drain more money than my parents had made in 5 years. And still, I wasn't family enough for a folding chair and a slice of cake. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. Mom, don't overreact. It's going to be a small, intimate gathering. You know how space is with these venues, then another. Mom, we don't want to cause drama right before the big day. Ah, there it was. It wasn't about space. It wasn't about closeness. It was about quiet, about keeping the picture tidy. And I didn't fit. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd done too much. I'd stopped being the background character. And now I was inconvenient. I set the phone down and just sat there. All the years I spent proving my worth. The money, the forgiveness. The casserole dinners where I tried to read their silences like scripture. And still, when it came down to it, close family only. The phrase looped in my head like static. I got up, walked to the sink, and dumped the rest of my salad down the drain. Then I picked up my phone again. Still no new messages, no apology, no explanation. Just the cold truth of exclusion dressed up in passive phrasing. My fingers hovered over the screen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I typed back 2 words. Emily, noted, and I pressed send. Then I turned my phone face down and let the silence settle in around me like armor. I told myself there had to be a mistake. Jason had always been careless with words, impulsive with decisions. Maybe Brooke didn't know. Maybe Mom hadn't seen the guest list yet. Maybe, just maybe, someone would fix it. So the next night I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't been back since the night I signed away $750,000 for their boy's future. But the porch light was still the same yellow flicker, and the creaky screen door still stuck halfway open like it was trying to warn me, don't. They were already eating when I walked in. The smell of meatloaf filled the house, Dad's favorite. Brooke's name was written on a whiteboard on the fridge under a list of wedding week must-haves. My name wasn't there. Mom looked up from the table, surprised but not unwelcoming. Emily, I didn't know you were coming. I figured we needed to talk, I said, my voice calm despite the way my stomach clenched. I just wanted a few minutes. Dad kept cutting his meatloaf, slow and steady as if I hadn't spoken. I stayed standing. I got Jason's message, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. About the wedding. Mom gave me that tight-lipped look that always meant please don't make this uncomfortable. Sweetheart, she started, we just thought it might be simpler this way. Not inviting me, I asked. After everything, Dad finally set his fork down. He didn't look angry, just tired. It's his day, he said. We don't want to cause drama. I blinked. That was it. No apology, no confusion. No, of course we'll talk to him, this is wrong. Just that, we don't want to cause drama. I paid for the house, I said quietly. You know that, right? They exchanged a glance. Mom said, you offered, it was generous, and we're all grateful. But not enough to be invited. It's not about that, Dad said. Then what is it about? Silence. I looked at both of them, waiting, begging for one of them to say what I needed to hear. That they'd fix it. That this was an oversight. That Jason was being a jerk and they would stand beside me finally. But they didn't, they just kept eating. And somewhere in the middle of that sound, the dull clink of a knife against china, the soft hum of the fridge, I felt something inside me go still, like a light had been turned off. I wasn't angry, not yet, I was just stunned. Like a child realizing, after years of trying to be good, that Santa isn't real and never was. I'm your daughter, I said, not even trying to hide the break in my voice. I've never asked you for anything, not once. And I gave him everything. Mom reached for her glass. Emily, please don't make this harder. I didn't make this anything, Jason made this, you're just letting it happen. Dad picked up his fork again, it's his wedding. And I'm your daughter, I whispered. No one answered. I stood there a second longer. Long enough to feel the sting behind my eyes turn into something sharper. Then I turned and walked out. No slamming doors, no yelling. Just the soft creak of the screen as I let it close behind me. The porch light buzzed as I passed under it. I didn't look back. Because I knew what I'd see, 2 people finishing dinner like I'd never been there. Like I'd never mattered. The morning of Jason's wedding, I woke up before sunrise. Not to do my makeup. Not to cry over a dress I wouldn't wear. Not to rehearse a toast I'd never be asked to give. But to meet a realtor in a quiet neighborhood where the windows still bore dust from the first inspection and the floors hadn't felt the weight of a family yet. Jason's dream house. The one I bought. The one they promised to build a future in with me watching quietly from the sidelines. But not today. Today I wasn't in the audience. I was on the deed. And I was ready to be done with all of it. I pulled into the driveway just as the locksmith's van pulled out. Fresh locks. New keys. The weight of them sat heavy in my purse. Denise, my realtor, waved from the front porch. "Morning, Emily." She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could sell you a tent in a thunderstorm. But she'd asked no questions when I said, "Yes, I want to sell this property." "No, I don't want the buyers to know the backstory, just numbers, clean and cold, like I needed it to be." "You sure you want to do this today?" she asked gently. "It's Saturday. Closing can wait till Monday." I shook my head. "Today's good." I wanted it to be done before Jason said his vows, wanted the final thread severed before the music started and they raised glasses to a house that was no longer theirs. She pulled out the paperwork, walking me through the details. "Final offers come in a little below market," she said cautiously. "But it's fast, cash, and clean. Young couple, first-time buyers, they're over the moon." I nodded. "Let them have it. You're losing about 40,000 off what you paid." "I'm not losing anything," I said. "I'm gaining peace." She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. We signed, and just like that it was done. A few strokes of a pen, and a promise I'd once made in good faith was no longer my responsibility. As Denise packed up her briefcase, the locksmith gave me a thumbs up from his van. "All set," he called out. "No way the old keys work now." I smiled faintly. "Perfect." I stood on the porch a moment longer, staring at the house I'd never even stepped foot inside after buying it. It still looked beautiful, white siding, black shutters, a porch swing that Brooke had picked from a Pinterest board and texted Jason at 2 a.m. It was everything they wanted. Until they decided I wasn't part of that picture. "Let's see who's family now." The thought came unbidden, sharp as a match strike. I wasn't angry. Not like before, I was just done. Done trying to earn affection that was only handed out when convenient. Done giving and then being told I was asking for too much when I wanted basic dignity in return. I opened my phone and pulled up my banking app. Watched the escrow transfer in real time. $685,000. Transferred in full. Not what I paid. Not what I gave. But something about it felt better than a profit. It felt like a clean break. A receipt that proved I was never the desperate one. I was the investor, and today I finally cashed out. I got back in my car and didn't look back. Let them find out the way they told me I didn't belong, without warning, without ceremony, without family. That evening I waited, not out of spite, not even out of revenge, just clarity. It was the kind of southern dusk that wraps around your skin like warm syrup, pink sky melting into a soft gray, the world holding its breath after the heat breaks. I parked across the street in a rental car, dark windows up, engine off. Just me, the porch shadows, and a silent satisfaction I hadn't known I was capable of feeling. Around 7:42 p.m., headlights swung around the corner. A champagne-colored SUV pulled into the driveway. White ribbons still fluttered from the antenna. Someone had written, "Just married," in big looping letters across the back windshield with shaving cream. Jason stepped out first, grinning like a man who thought the world had finally arranged itself perfectly for him. Brooke followed, her dress casual now, but her hair still pinned elegantly, makeup still picture-perfect from a day of dancing and adoration. She was filming something on her phone, giggling. "We're home," Jason shouted as he pulled a silver key from his jacket pocket and strutted toward the front door. "First night in our forever place." He slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. Paused, frowned, and tried again. "No click, no give. Did you give me the wrong one?" he called over his shoulder to Brooke. "What? No, that's the one you showed me last week," she said, lowering her phone. "Try again." Jason rattled the key harder, then banged the knob. "What the hell?" He looked around, baffled, reached up and tried the doorbell. It didn't chime. The new buyers hadn't activated the line yet. Then I stepped forward. I wasn't dressed for drama, just black jeans, flats, a simple jacket. But I might as well have been wearing armor for how calm I felt. Jason turned at the sound of my steps. His confusion twisted instantly into annoyance. "Emily," Brooke looked at me surprised. "Wait, were you inside? Why's the door?" "I wasn't inside," I said, voice steady. "I was across the street." Jason's brow furrowed. "Why are you here? I wanted to see your face." "For what?" he snapped, keys still in hand. "Why doesn't this work?" I let the silence stretch for half a breath. "Because I sold it." Jason blinked. Brooke froze. The night was suddenly thick with confusion. "You what?" Jason barked. "I sold the house," I repeated, clear, quiet, immovable. "This morning. The new owners get the keys tomorrow." You're joking. I'm not. He took a step toward me, eyes wide. That's not possible, that's Emily, that's our house. I tilted my head. Was it because last I checked you didn't even think I was family? Brooke's eyebrows lifted, confusion etched in her face. Wait. What is she talking about? Jason turned to her, hesitating. She gifted us the down payment. That doesn't mean. I paid for the whole house, I said calmly. Every cent, and then you told me not to come to your wedding because I wasn't close family. So I figured if I'm not family, why should I keep paying for your dreams? Brooke looked at Jason. He was already starting to stammer. That's not what I meant, Em, come on, it was complicated. No, I said. It was clear. Jason looked at the door, then at me, then at Brooke, who was no longer smiling. I have people coming next week to move furniture in, he said. I just got married. And I just got clarity, I said. Congrats. Brooke folded her arms. Jason, did you really tell her not to come? He flinched. Look, we didn't want to make it weird. There were family dynamics. You told me she didn't want to come, Brooke said, her voice sharpening. That she was too busy or something. Jason opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And for the first time in years, he was the one stumbling for footing. I turned to leave, my keys still in my pocket. But I paused, looked back at them once more, and said with a smile, guess you'll have to build your forever place from scratch. Then I walked away. And this time I didn't look back, not to see his face, not to ease her confusion, not to explain myself, because I had finally learned. You don't owe explanations to people who decided you weren't worth including. The commotion traveled fast. By the time I pulled out of the neighborhood, my phone was already vibrating with calls from Jason, from Mom, even from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them all, but I wasn't done. I knew somehow that they wouldn't just let it go, not quietly, not privately, so I didn't go home, I waited. At the coffee shop 2 blocks from the family house. Corner booth, hot tea I didn't drink. Watching the sun go down behind the steeple of the old Baptist church across the street, letting the weight of everything settle. And then, like I'd summoned them with silence, I saw them arrive. Jason's SUV screeched into the driveway. A second later, a smaller car pulled in behind them, Mom and Dad. Of course. No delay between sides when one of their favorites was in distress. I parked around the corner and walked. The front yard was glowing under porch lights. The house looked just like it always had, except now I wasn't just the daughter who didn't belong. I was the owner who chose to let it go. Jason was standing on the porch, arms flailing. Mom was clutching her purse to her chest. Dad was pacing in tight circles. Brooke stood in the center of it all, her face unreadable until she saw me. I walked up slowly, deliberately, calm as ice. Jason stepped forward first. What the hell is wrong with you? He yelled. You blindsided us. I stopped at the edge of the lawn, folding my arms. I told you, I sold the house. You chose to cut me out. I decided to return the favor. You said it was a gift. You said I wasn't family. Brooke turned sharply to him. Wait, you said that? Jason's jaw clenched. It was complicated. I told her not to come so things wouldn't be tense. You told me she didn't want to come, Brooke snapped, stepping back from him. Jason's eyes darted between us. I was trying to keep things simple. She's always been dramatic. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting, I don't remember throwing a tantrum when I wrote the check for the down payment. Because you wanted to be included, Jason shouted. That's what this is all about, isn't it? You didn't get the attention you wanted. And there it was, the truth he believed, that I had bought a house to be liked. Not because I loved him, not because I believed in family, not because I wanted us to grow closer, but because I was desperate. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Brooke turned slowly to me, her voice soft, disbelieving. Why weren't you at the wedding? I looked her in the eye. He told me not to come, I said, because I wasn't close family. Silence fell, like the sky forgot to breathe. Brooke's face changed, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally fury. She turned to Jason, eyes wide. You lied to me. Brooke, you lied about why she wasn't there. You made her pay for our house and then cut her out of our wedding. Jason stepped toward her. It wasn't like that, she stepped back. No, it was exactly like that. Mom finally broke in. Let's all calm down. No, Brooke said, her voice shaking but firm. Don't defend this. Then she looked at me, eyes wide, tear-lined, a storm of realization flooding her. I'm with you, she said, stepping toward me. You didn't deserve any of this, and I'm not going to be part of this family if this is how they treat people. Jason opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Brooke grabbed my hand, tightly. I don't know what we do next, she said. But we fix this together. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider with her face pressed to the glass. I was the one walking away from the fire with someone finally choosing to walk beside me. 3 weeks later, we were sitting at a small cafe tucked behind the downtown courthouse. Me, Brooke, and a woman named Serena, who stirred oat milk into her latte like she was slowly churning the past. She kicked you out after the baby was born? Brooke asked, eyes wide. Serena nodded, lips pursed. Said she needed space, her house, her rules. I'd been paying rent the whole time. I leaned back in my chair, coffee untouched. Let me guess, your name wasn't on the lease, she sighed. Nope, just my money on the Venmo receipts. Brooke shook her head. Honestly, what is it with people thinking they can take everything from you and still act like they're the ones being generous? We all laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. Because it was ridiculous how many versions of this story existed. Different faces. Same betrayal. Serena had met Brooke through a local women's networking circle. She ran a small copywriting business out of her apartment and did occasional marketing work for nonprofits. When she heard a house story had blown up in Brooke's life, she offered to meet for coffee, and I tagged along, curious. I didn't know what I expected, but I didn't expect to feel seen. I used to think it was just me, Serena said, crossing her arms. Like I was defective for expecting respect after doing everything right. Brooke snorted. Same, I used to think I was so lucky Jason picked me. Now I'm trying to remember what I was even attracted to. She looked over at me. I'm sorry for not knowing, for not asking. You couldn't have known, I said quietly. He made sure of that. But I believed him, she whispered. And that's on me. I nodded, then offered her a small smile. You saw it, that's what matters. A beat passed, then Brooke smiled back. You still thinking about buying it back? My heart lifted a little. I told her offhand that I had put in a quiet call to Denise, the realtor, that the house hadn't been officially transferred yet, just under contract, that I could reverse it if I wanted to. I'd been on the fence. At first, I just wanted it sold, gone, erased. But over the past couple weeks, something shifted. Maybe it wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about reclaiming space that had been stolen, not the house, but the agency. The offer's still on the table, I said, sipping my coffee. Denise said I have 48 hours. Serena raised a brow. And, I looked at them both. These two women, one nearly a stranger, the other, once a stranger by design, now felt closer than the people I'd grown up with. I think I'm going to do it, I said. Buy it back. But this time, not for them. Not even for me, really. Then for who? Brooke asked. For everyone who ever paid their way into a room and still got treated like they didn't belong in it. Brooke raised her cup. To new rooms. Serena joined, and locked doors. I smiled, raising mine, and unlocked truths. We clinked our mugs together. That afternoon, I walked out of the cafe and called Denise. Go ahead, I said, buy it back, cash. And just like that, what was once taken became mine again, by choice, not by default. I wasn't anyone's backup plan anymore. I was my own foundation. The porch swing still creaks on warm evenings, but now it carries the laughter of people who love without ledger books, who stay because they want to, not because they've been bought. It's been exactly 1 year since Jason and Brooke's wedding. The one I wasn't invited to. The one that split my family not because of drama, but because truth tends to cut deeper than lies ever could. I still remember the feel of the new keys in my palm when I bought the house back. Denise had handed them over with a wink and said, "Second chances come in weird wrappers, huh?" She had no idea. What began as a transaction turned into something else, a soft, slow rebuild. The place never held Jason's furniture. Never heard Brooke call it home the way she once imagined. Instead, it heard new voices. Serena helped me paint the kitchen cabinets one weekend. We laughed about our first heartbreaks and the horror of shared bathrooms in college dorms. Brooke brought over curtains, then bookshelves, then herself after the divorce. Yeah, that didn't last. 3 months in, Brooke found Jason's second phone. Turns out betrayal wasn't just reserved for his sister. He had a pattern. And she had enough. She moved into the guest room for a week and somehow never left. She pays for groceries, folds laundry before I even notice it's in the dryer, and swears she's going to get a cat the minute you blink. The house breathes differently now. It's softer, warmer, a home in the true sense, not made of wood and drywall but of relief and realness. Tonight we're hosting dinner. There's lasagna in the oven, mismatched chairs around the long reclaimed wood table Brooke found at a flea market, and fairy lights strung across the backyard fence. Serena's coming. So is her sister. A girl from one of my old consulting gigs is bringing her toddler and a pie. It's not a curated guest list. It's a mosaic of people who came into my life during the hardest year I've ever faced and stayed because I stopped asking what I had to do to earn love. They just gave it. The clock hits 6:30. The doorbell rings. Laughter fills the hall before the front door even opens. People pour in with hugs, covered dishes, handwritten cards. Someone plays music on a Bluetooth speaker, and someone else lights candles on the porch just because it feels nice. No one mentions Jason. No one asks about mom and dad. They haven't called, not once. But that ache, it's smaller now, not gone but dulled by the volume of joy that's taken its place. Later, after plates are scraped clean and the room is buzzing with quiet stories and clinking glasses, I stand. Hey, I say gently. The table quiets. I lift my glass, not with pomp but peace. This time last year, I begin. I stood on this porch and gave away everything I had, hoping to be accepted by people who never truly saw me. A few murmurs of knowing fill the air. But tonight I'm surrounded by people who did, who see me without price tags or strings. So, I raise my glass a little higher. To chosen families, I say, meeting their eyes. To locked doors, Serena echoes with a grin. Brooke finishes it with a smile that's still healing but whole. And unlocked truths. We toast, we laugh. And as I sit back down, surrounded by light and noise and people who make room for me without needing to be reminded I belong, I realize, this isn't the ending I expected. It's better.